Let's get a little bit deeper. Tobias, you crushed the agency business. You structured a lot of deals, notably the E-League, rollout, and what you've done there. You got out of the agency business, man, and it seemed like you had a pretty good thing going. Yeah. What's up?
Yeah, well, okay, so what I'm doing now, an agency can't do, right? An agency can't become a game publisher. It's just not possible. I mean, if you think about it, an agency should be primarily agnostic to opportunity, right? They can't really play favorites. They do in certain areas. Obviously, we can see with WME IMG, my former employer, where they went ahead and purchased the UFC. They make big moves. There's no doubt. But I think one of the greatest things that both Turner and WME offered us initially with E-League was the freedom to go do it. They never interfered with anything. They gave 100% support. And, we went and just did that on the phone every day. And I got laughed at. The first team I called, I won't mention who they were, it was a European team, and they ended up signing up. But they laughed at me. It'll never work. You'll never get a major, and it's not going to go to TV. Right? And I said, well, here's the contracts. Here's the, and they laughed, which is fine. It's typical. And I think that that's where I live in the space. If I'm not sort of pushing the limits, if I'm not out there saying, no, we can do more, we can do better, we can go bigger, and we can provide more value while we do it, then I'm failing. Because you're right, I could have just stayed there and sort of rode off into the sunset, but I feel it's an obligation when I see all this money flowing in, and I can see better ways, I think, to achieve what they're trying to achieve. And the bottom line is this. We can just cut to the chase here and just say, look, sports teams need to own the product. They need to own the IP. That's the bottom line. It's the world they know. It's what they want to do. It's what they desire to do. And whether they want to wake up to that today or tomorrow or next week or next month or next year, they're going to make that realization. And I think a lot of them have. And I think where we play in the space, maybe some publishers might not love what we're doing. Maybe some are saying, why would you do it that way? You could do it the way we're doing it and make more money, which I'm not about. I think everybody knows that. But I think if they'll just take a beat, take a minute, it's going to pan out for everybody much better. So the reason I left was I saw this opportunity to say, hey, we can build something better and everybody can benefit. They might not believe it at first, but they didn't think so when I was going to do the agency either, right? And MLG wasn't exactly pleased when I announced an agency years and years and years ago when they were really the only player in North America, and then Sundance ended up officiating my wedding. So that's usually how things go. I think if everyone has a little bit of patience, there's no need to try to be an empire builder here. I think that if we're all smart about this, it plays out great for everybody. But the only thing that I will say, the only thing that can really derail this thing is greed, right? I think greed and ego are two things that esports has no place for right now. So I don't care how much money you got a team to spend for a franchise. That doesn't matter to me. Shouldn't matter to you, and shouldn't really matter to your stockholders either. I don't think that, and I think some publishers agree with that are doing it, and maybe some have a different take. But, I think that for now, it's pivotal that whoever is investing has a pathway to value and money and making money, because that's what fuels this whole party, right? It's not a charity, and as much as we all love it, if we want to see the show keep going, we have to make sure and ensure that that the returns are being made.
You're talking about some character traits. You mentioned greed. How do you ensure that the humility is there, that the inclusion is there in the space, given your track record and experience? I mean, you're in a pretty unique place to be critical, right? And keep outsiders out and protect the industry. Inclusion is something I'm really passionate about. I feel like a lot of people in the space have gone to these ivory tower positions, and that inclusion's kind of, it's not there, and it's hurtful for me. At least I question it. As a gamer, I feel like we all look for that. Gaming was our outlet, it's what we went for. Where do you stand when it comes to that? Inclusion and bringing people really into the space.
I mean, I got goosebumps right now. You can see them. It's that's something I'm super passionate about, man. I mean, that's another reason I think where I left the big machine. As great as that is, and as great as we are able to accomplish things, and I love the legacy of what we leave behind there. And I'm sure whoever comes in there is going to innovate further on sort of the things that we've laid down and invent new things. But I mean, I feel you on that, because it's the same exact situation. Every time I've done something in the space, I've been faced with somebody trying to push me to the side or push me out, or it won't work. Or, I mean, it's gotten a lot easier. Obviously, when you get some wins, it becomes easier. In relationships with people that know that sort of, hey, we're in the boat together. But there is definitely a sense, and that's why I talked a little bit in the beginning of the interview about saying I'm here to ensure that we don't whitewash the history of esports. You know, some big publisher coming in, and when you say outsiders, I sort of include some of these AAA titles as outsiders. They could have helped. I mean, years ago, it wouldn't have been that hard for them to pick up a phone to Papa John's and say, hey, we have this grassroots thing that's really taken off in Korea, and we've got these North American teams, and they're struggling, and everyone's really pulling together as a publisher. You know, we'll give you a spot, we'll give you an item, we'll give you an in-game. But I mean, it's funny because some of these publishers we're talking to today, I met with them right before E-League 3 or 4 years ago, and they were showing me their plans, and we were sort of vibing and on what could be done in the space. And I'm like, well, you're going to do in-game items, right? No, that's not what we do. You're not going to give fans the chance to celebrate their favorite team. So when you talk about inclusion, there's the business side of it, there's the fan side of it, there's the player side of it even, because they're boxed out. I think these new player associations are great. And I think everyone has an answer to those. I think on the business side, we go through these ebbs and flows every 5 or 6 years where it's like, oh, the door's shut, there's no more, which is complete BS. We haven't scratched the surface of esports, right? Content is king, traffic is God. Nobody's figured out how to maximize that yet. And, you know, activations and all these different things, you know, for us, it's why I'm here today. Like, I have other meetings in Vegas. I literally flew here to do this, touchdown, talk to people, out there talking to Rustin. You know, I met him a year ago. He's hustling. I like talking to the new young guys that are coming in, the young guns, and seeing how can I help them? How can we? And it has nothing to do. It is purely out of sort of esports altruism. And I think a lot of people that try to go that route even sometimes get a bad name for doing that. Because again, why are you helping this guy? He's competing. Everybody's competing with somebody, right? So I think that, you know, I mean, I know I'm on a tangent here, but I am passionate about the inclusion. I am passionate about the inclusion. I think that, you know, if certain people had their way, there wouldn't be no inclusion. We're going to set the standard of how it's going to be, and that's it. If you look at, but that's an old model anyway, right? Look at the NFL, the NBA, NHL. It's all worked so well since the 60s. It's a great 1960s model television that is now shattered, right? So they're looking for audience. They're looking for how to engage millennials. And that's, of course, what the sponsors want to pay for everything. So you've got a lot of smart people, but I think you've got some people going, let's just use the old model in a new space, and we're just going to hire people that we know and our cronies and our buddies from around Hollywood and around the way that we work with. And I think that at the end of the day, that's going to be a subpar product. You know, one of the greatest things we got from Turner was Craig Berry bought in 1,000% to the fact that this needs to be authentic, and just went ham on learning every aspect of it that he possibly could. And was, when we would yell at him and be like, that's a stupid idea. In the early days, he was super receptive to that. There was no ego in that room, right? And I think now that's changed. I think now you've got people that are afraid to speak up. Then that's coming more and more. Like, people are afraid to say things. Teams are afraid to say things. That's insanity. You guys built this. You need to be empowered to say things. How can you be afraid to say something? Are you kidding me? If you don't think it's right, say it, or then don't complain. You know what I mean? Because it's never going to change. And I fear that the inclusion rates will drop the more you just give into that machine, right? But it's never been easier than to just grab a camera, even if it's just a cell phone. And I mean, I won't use his name, but a certain exec from a network said something awesome the other day. He said, I can go produce an Emmy-winning show any moment I want, but kids would rather watch LeBron, you know, shot on an iPhone at a barbershop talk basketball. That's what they're used to seeing, and that's the way media is sort of starting to head. So I think I had a lot of people tell me early on, the agency will never work, E-League will never work, you'll never make money, you know, you'll never be able to invest in other companies, you'll never all this stuff along the way. And if I listened to any of them, I wouldn't be here today. Like, that just drove me. So I know there's a lot of people out there right now that are like, man, I'm just going to give up on this esports thing. I've tried long enough. It's not going to work. It's just, there's no money. I almost went personally broke. I'll admit that. Like, I mean, I put so much of my own money into it. I really laid it all on the line, far beyond what I thought I was going to do, right? I had a stopgap, and we blew past that. And it all worked out, and I think it will. If you're passionate, you love it, and you drive. And guess what? If they're not going to include you, go do your own. And that's what I do all the time, right? Like, if you kick that door down and you say, I'm here and I'm going to partner with the best and we're going to make it the best and this is how we're going to do it. But you have to have the idea to support the team. I mean, really, it's not me. It's Lily Russo, it's Simon at Bitball, it's Scott Merchant. You know, it's these people I've been with for 10, 20 years on my team, right? Because it wasn't just like, when it wasn't just me leaving, we all left, you know, together to go do this new venture that we think the space needs. And I believe IMG will benefit from. I believe, you know, for sure WME IMG will benefit from some of the things that we're bringing to fruition. And so, but it's all about the inclusion, right? And I know it's a soapbox moment, but if you're not out talking to the young guys, if you're not out including them in what you're doing, then you're missing a big boat, you're wasting a lot of money, and you're not actually talking to the experts. Everybody thinks they're an expert, and you know, I get paid a lot of money to consult, and I'll be the first one to tell you, we figure out stuff every single day that we didn't see coming, that we didn't know about, and we make mistakes all the time, right? I think our primary difference is we learn from them and say, hey, this feels a little bit similar, but we wouldn't have that unless we were, our ears always to the grindstone, and we're always out, you know, talking to the youth, talking to the who's up and coming, and God dang, it's so special. If you lose, that's what's great about esports. If you lose this community, you lose everything.
Yeah, look, man, I can appreciate that. I think you're talking about leadership at its core, its finest on a top level. How can you do more as a leader? I think you're in the unique position to establish some type of organization or something as a leader, supporting mentorship, essentially, for young leaders in esports. Young leaders in esports, we could come up with some acronym for that or something, like an organization that you can bring people in, and guys like Sundance and Hector, you, Fizz, you know, you got everybody, Rishi, like these guys.
Those are all my guys, like everybody you just mentioned. Yeah, all amazing people, by the way, in their own right, and all could go do whatever they wanted to do. And I think that, I mean, Rishi helped me on a personal level twice, as did Fizz. Once years ago when a deal was going to go south and you know, somebody was not acting above board, and they helped 100% when I made the call. And then recently on a personal level, you know, Rishi really helped me out with sort of, I don't, really don't want to get into it, but there was a person that was not all there, mentally unstable on Twitter, and they helped, and it escalated all the way, believe it or not, it's a crazy story, all the way to the Secret Service, because he was threatening the president in Florida. But putting that to the side, my point is not that. The point is that these are the guys you can call on because they're the best people in the world. They're not just great in esports, they're just great people. So I think, to get to your question about doing more as a leader, it's something we consistently think about. It's, you know, there is 1,000% a passion at Foundry for wanting to drive new ideas, and we want to set up an incubator in Vegas. So we're taking the steps to get the incubator set. That really has never been announced, but I'm not afraid to say it because it's something we're going to do. Like, there's no doubt. You know, I think Lily is doing a lot of great work, not just with, you know, esports athletes and what she's gleaned from IMG Academy and all those different things, but also where, you know, you can look at the casters, we can look at new influencers that are coming on. If you want to learn how to, you know, how to conduct yourself, how to go ahead and be professional, all these things are all there for the take. Nobody's really stepping up to do that, and I think that all promotes a healthier community. So it's funny you should mention that. We are having conversations, the guys at Face It, us, you know, I would love to see an ESL, Face It. Whenever you see those guys sort of on board on the same thing, it'd be great, right? Like, sort of include everybody, and shame on us for not already doing it, right? Shame on me, shame on Hector, shame on Fizz. Not so much Rishi, because, you know, that guy's just he works too hard as it is. But the rest of us should have already sort of figured this out, right? Because you make a good point. There isn't enough of that. And it goes back to your inclusion question. So you're so right. And, you know, even the incubator doesn't really put, that gives you some space and some shared ideas, and you get to be around people you might not normally, but I think what you're talking about could be even bigger, and it is our obligation to figure out what that is. And I would challenge Twitch, and I would challenge YouTube, and sort of the incumbent media powers that be, Turner, to say, hey, why don't we, you know, let's go establish this. And you can bet that there'll be emails flying tonight, thanks to you, off the back of this interview, where it's, you know, rekindling a lot of the discussions we've had around, you know, around the mentoring, around how to go ahead and help lend a hand to people that need it. Because, we've all been there in esports. We've all been down to our last dollar, our last minute, our last opportunity, and somehow together as a community, we make it work, right? So I think that it's our obligation to hand that back down. It really is.
Yeah, man, I think that's amazing what you're saying, and I feel the authenticity and the realness behind your words, and I appreciate it so much. It means a lot to me personally, an entrepreneur in the space that's grinding and hustling to try to just build a sustainable business that isn't all rainbows and butterflies that some reports may show you in the space, that it's a very grindy message that even Jason Lake will, he's a big one that speaks to it. 10, 15 years of grit and grind and sacrifice that, we put it all on the line. So I think having those that are in a position and strong enough to stand on their 2 feet and kind of, you're in a position to do it. Some of the 4 horsemen of the industry, per se, lack of better words, but I think it takes a unique individual to do that. And I don't know, I feel like some other people sometimes could be scared to maybe to uplift others. I don't know what it is, but
there's definitely an insecurity out there that you have to fight. I'll check myself a lot. Like if I feel like, I like to be happy for anybody, even if it's a competitor, even if it's something I don't think that should be done, but they get something right. Like I'm happy for that, right? So I wear my emotions on the sleeve. I'm a passionate guy, but I drive business, and at the end of the day, that can't be all. Like I think which is also what you're alluding to, and it is actually just really good for the overall health. So, Jason is a prime example. Like this guy, we've worked together a lot. At WME, I would bring him in the early days to talk to sponsors, potential sponsors that want to come in, non-endemics, to explain esports and where it's been in the history, because what better guy? And I think that Jason is very soon going to be put in a position to lead us into the future in a lot of ways, and at the head of the table. And I've tried to get him to that position for a long time. And thank God that they haven't come to fruition, because I think now is definitely the perfect time for it. But talk about a great leader, and it all worked out great for him. And you all see the headlines with Dallas and everything else, and what they're doing in Frisco and the offices, and it's great. But it's easy to forget about the struggles and the 15 years of just again down to the last same. We've all been there, right? So I think. It's important to have a guy like Jason sort of forefront, because he reminds everybody, one, he inspires people that are having a hard time in the space to stick it out, and that it's going to work. Like, just put the time in, put the work in, you're going to get there. And then, two, to be able to celebrate with, because look where he's at. And I can't wait to see what comes next for Jason Lake and that organization, because complexity is going to be, right in the thick of it. Because I think for the longest, Jason had not benefited from some of the things that other players did. Like you said, instead of uplifting somebody, he always played it above board, and that doesn't always get you the best roster, the best players, the best influencers, right? Sometimes that puts you in the last position. Nice guys finish last. But he has one thing about Jason is there's a level of professional courtesy with him that he always extends. And I think that more team owners need to extend that professional courtesy to each other, right? Because if you look at everything I've done in the space, from the venture capital deals, television, media rights, E-League, the player representation, in some instances the publisher representation, consulting for the brands, I've never owned a team, right? Notice that nowhere in there did I own a team. And there's sort of 2 reasons for that. One is, if I own a team, I can't work with any other teams, right? Which would kill me, because that's not my role in the play, that's not my role in the space. And I've had plenty of offers, and I'm like, I'm not your guy. You know what I mean? I might, you'd have to save me from myself. I'll probably help every other team still, right? I'll finish dead last in the league every year. So, but I think that, you've got guys like Jason that is his role, and that is what they should do, because they're built for that, and he knows that he's an expert in that realm, right? And so where's the next Jason is my question. You know what I mean? Like we can never have enough good team owners, right? And the sports teams right now, the number one thing that they need, the number one commodity in the space is expertise. And I think, sports teams they know that they need to be married to this right now, and I'm having a hard time, right? I have multiple teams, they call me all the time. I feel like I'm one of those job search engines, right? They're like, who can we hire? Who can we hire? Who can we hire? I mean, my former assistant, Brett, and I shouldn't even say assistant. I mean, I say assistant because I'm so proud of how far he came. He wasn't assistant for very long. Within a year, he became president of NRG. Right? And I think he's doing a great job with that org. Through Andy Miller, who called me, and I said, God, I hate to give you, this guy's my horse here. I need him. But to your point, the inclusion, it's a great opportunity for him. it's going to hurt me. It's not going to benefit me, but it's going to benefit him. And I think that we need more of that person, right? So wherever that person is, they need to step up and be heard and be known to say, hey, if you're a sports team that's looking for expertise, I'm your guy. And maybe there needs to be a forum created for that, or its own, I know there's a few esports job searches out there that sort of highlight that, but expertise is at a minimum right now in the space, and it's something that I feel like, is something that the answer's there. We just need to find those people, because the orgs need them, and without that touchstone, without that Rosetta Stone to what's real in the space, it's going to get bad fast. I mean, it's going to be boring, and they're going to lose viewership, and it's going to be a crappy output, right? I think that if everybody you mention, make sure that it's not that. You know what I mean? Everybody that you mention, make sure it stays real and the community is aligned. Because if you're not aligned with the community, they'll let you know. Fast.
Cool, man. Thanks so much for an amazing interview. Thank you for what you do. And let's build some leaders.
Yeah, man. Let's build some leaders. Thank you.